The most important hire Ben Johnson will make is defensive coordinator because he's an offensive coach, and we've seen many offensive coordinators who become head coaches throw the keys to the defense to the coordinator who they hired. Dennis Allen, reportedly the leading candidate to join Ben Johnson in Chicago, and the Bears also reportedly targeting Darren Rizzi, the interim coach with the Saints, who was a special teams coordinator there. So there's a certain irony, if I'm using that word properly, and I never know if I am, but what the hell, I do it anyway, in Johnson raiding the Saints, because the Saints weren't interested in Johnson. Saints, Jets, and Cowboys showed no interest in Ben Johnson. The Jets' position was, we don't want to have to recruit anyone, which, okay, maybe that helps explain why you are the Jets. Why recruit someone when you just have to rely on their Madden ratings anyway? But the Saints were confusing that they weren't in the Ben Johnson thing unless they just knew what it was going to cost and they're not interested. I mean, last year, teams reportedly were scared away by what he wanted, even though those reports didn't mention what he actually wanted. I think the Saints knew it was going to be expensive, and maybe that's why they didn't do it. So now the Saints are going to see, not that they cared about keeping Dennis Allen because they had fired him, but Darren Rizzi, there was a chance he might have stuck around as a special teams coordinator on the new staff. He may end up with Chicago Bears. So, Dennis Allen has done well enough multiple times as a defensive coordinator become a head coach. And I remember when he was with the Saints under Sean Payton, and they shut out Tom Brady and the Buccaneers on a Sunday night at one point. And they, in the regular season, did very well against Brady and the Buccaneers. And I remember thinking, man, why isn't Dennis Allen getting looks to be a head coach? He inherited the job after Sean Payton left, went 18-25, and he could be like a Wade Phillips, who is so good as a coordinator, he inevitably earns opportunities to go to the level where he just doesn't have the same success. So at some point you just accept, this is what my best job is. My best performance is at this level where I can perform so well that somebody might think about hiring me to be a head coach again.
And I think for football coaches, there's a joy in being a coordinator. Like, you don't have to deal with all the extra stuff. And I've talked to coaches before, and they feel like that coordinator role allows you. It's just about ball. I get to do football. When you become a head coach, you start having to do some other things that is just not football a lot of times. And I think about the connections, like you just said. I think about Ben Johnson's time in Miami was during Darren Rizzi's time in Miami too, as Darren Rizzi was a special teams coordinator. So you just think about those connections of Ben Johnson might call Coach Rizzi and say, hey, I don't know what's going to work out, but if you're open and you're going to be a special teams coach, again, I would love for you to be my special teams coach. You know how I operate. You know me personally. Hey, how about we give Dennis Allen a call? Maybe he'll be our defensive coordinator, and you see staffs be put together. I think that's one of the key things of putting your staff together, just creating some cohesiveness between whether it's the head coach knows the person or that person knows another person. When your staff comes in, there's not this kind of huge, let's get to know each other first before we have to go and insert game plans and get 53 guys or 70 guys when you count practice squad and everything else to believe in what we're doing when we're still trying to figure out if we believe in what we're doing. And I think that's the hardest part for these coaches when they become head coaches. I remember even this past year talking to Gerard Mayos, he was putting together a staff of trying to find the right guys to mix in there together. And I think that's the key. You have to avoid some of the time that you would have to spend to get to know each other, or you have to truly invest in it. Jason Garrett talked to us about Dan Quinn going to Washington and how much time in the offseason he spent not really on football yet, but just building the staff and the players and building that culture for them to get to know each other. And I think that's such a key part of being a first-time head coach. And I think for Ben Johnson, if he can land Dennis Allen and Darren Rizzi as his special teams and defensive coordinator, that just gets you off to one of the best starts you can get as a new head coach. Because for one, you're getting ahead of the curve. You're getting guys that, as other teams are still searching for coaching positions, those guys are getting phone calls from other friends like, hey, if I get this job, I'm going to bring you. But it's a lot different when you get that job and you say, hey, here's the offer right here. This is what I'm willing to pay you. This is like, now you're getting things rolling. So kudos to Ben Johnson of trying to get ahead of that curve and going to get the best guys out there that he also probably has a pretty good relationship with.
And that's one of the realities of preparing for these interviews. Even when it's just a virtual interview, one of the things they want to know, who are you bringing with you? Who will you try to hire? It's never a done deal, but they have an idea of how they deliver. And frankly, the first test of a coach's credibility in the eyes of ownership and the front office of his new team is whether and to what extent he can deliver on the staff that he told them during the interview he would plan to try to bring with him. So we'll see who Johnson gets there. But on the defensive side of the ball, that's going to be critical because he obviously will have the offensive side of the ball taken care of. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.